When we're asking what pattern is simply what is formed when there's pressure between two media. So it's what happens with the boundary between water and land, or dry and humid air that will shape our clouds, or waves are just big spiraling events that happen in the ocean. So if we take a hurricane, for example, it's so energetic that it can be expressed in harmonic form in the ocean. So the hurricane, when you start off at the beginning of the hurricane, it's very chaotic. And as you go outward, the waves and the swells become harmonic and move out from the energy source. Then they become crested waves near the shore. And when they become crested waves on the shore, that's when they're going to reach another boundary, which is the shore itself. And so that's right on the edge of chaos. So the boundary of the shore is the edge of chaos. And right at that edge of chaos, there's an expression of the original pattern, which is the hurricane, because the water starts kind of spiraling again the same way that it would right where the hurricane was. And that's right where like your surf waves would be and things like that. And surf waves are just simply an expression of this kind of energy just closer to shore. And we're crazy enough, as humans to actually want to ride on this thing and actually surf on it. But it's a similar expression as we get to the shore as it was when that hurricane was forming in the middle of the ocean. Without technology or industry prior to all of those things taking place, we noticed that we could capture energy because we watched the patterns that were happening around us. If we worked with the patterns that nature created, then we could get a great result with very minimal effort. To make permanence in our culture easy, we need to see how patterns are expressed in our lives. Through the water, our access patterns; in nature, the way we build structures, the way we heat and cool air that's captured and released. Pattern is always around us, and we are part of this event. So you can't separate yourself from it. But if we force a pattern on a landscape that is against what nature wants to do, and if it's not in harmonic form, if it's out of size and scale for the application that we're trying to impose it upon, then the universal forces are going to reduce it down in size and scale until it's back into harmonic form again. So an example of this is if you try and straighten a river. Let's say it's just a small kind of like meandering stream. And if you try and straighten that stream out, so you dig and you take your excavator in there and you dig a whole new riverbed and you redirect the water, nature's not going to like that very much. And over time, nature's going to bring it back into harmonic form again. If you try to flatten the sand dunes, you can take a bulldozer in there and you can level them all off. But over time, nature's going to bring that back into harmonic form where you're going to get sand dunes again. But if you work with this energy and with these patterns in nature, then you have a big opportunity, because you're magnifying what's already going on, and nature itself is assisting you. So when you cooperate, you have backup, you have nature helping you out. And at that time, then we need to observe the evolutions in our system and get feedback from it to see if we're right on the right path or not. So we need to see when we've got it right and when we've got it wrong. And very often, when we get it wrong and we've imposed a pattern on a landscape that wasn't supposed to be there, then it's a pattern adjustment that needs to be made. for the most part. When we look at scale and order of size, it's kind of a hard thing to describe, so I'll do my best here, but the order of all scales of size only go from 5 to 9. So what this means is, if we look at the tree example, the tree will only branch out either 5 times, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 9 times. Most trees only go up to 7 orders of size breakdown, but nothing in the universe divides and splits more than 9 orders. And most things, it'll always be a minimum of 5 divisions. So if we look at this tree, this one that I drew has 1 trunk, then 3 branches, 9 branches, 27 branches, 81 branches, and would likely have 1 or 2 more orders to it to reach an order of 7. And as we saw before, there's a lot more of the small sizes than there are of the large sizes. So in the world, there are 7 sizes of river, more or less. I mean, obviously a little bit of discrepancies there, but generally there's 7 orders of size of river, with the Amazon being the largest. So if you look at if the Amazon is our biggest one, the next tier, the second tier, the top 7 rivers together in the second tier all add up in volume to the Amazon. That's how big the Amazon River is. And then if you look at the third tier of river, thousands of those have to add up to give you the same volume as the 7 top rivers. In the fourth tier, you need tens of thousands of those rivers. And in the 5th tier, you need hundreds of thousands of those rivers to add up to the 4th tier, and so on and so forth. And this goes for all things: humans, planets, galaxies, trees, on and on it goes. So if we look at just even the human body, and we're looking at ratios and size of order in this regard, we have the bones in our body go from large to smaller to smaller to smaller to smaller to smaller, and we are of order 7 when we're looking at the orders from 5 to 9. So if you look at the human body, our spine is 1, our humerus is 2, our forearm is 3, hand is 4, 5, 6, 7 is the tiny little knuckle. So once again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with our joints, and they get smaller and smaller as we get to the extremities. And the same thing can be said for our legs. So if we take our spine again as 1, and then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well, I guess 7 if I would have used something other than my large toe, but we go in orders of 7 with our human body as well. So just the same way that our blood and everything would move slower in our spine than it would at our fingertips, it's the same in trees, where the water and the sap moves faster at the tips of the branches than it does in the trunk. Nutrient moves faster at the tips of the roots than it does at the base, at the main root. So the volume is larger. As the volume is larger, the movement is slower. So when we look at what we're doing with the size of our agricultural systems and our cities, the way that we're living now, the reason why they're not working is that they're out of order. We have built things that are way too large for the natural systems and the ways that are harmonic with nature. If we look at our galaxy and we look at just the sheer sheer size and volume of it is kind of mind-blowing too. Like there's very long cycles in the galaxy and a very large scale. So the galaxy is 16 light years thick in the middle. So when we're talking about as the things get bigger, things move kind of slower. We are moving quickly, however, like we go around the galaxy once every 2 million years. So very long time cycles with something on that big of a scale. And the galaxy is moving in space too. It's not just stationary. And our planet is moving at 900 miles per hour. We're spinning around the sun at 19 miles per second. It's pretty mind-blowing when we look at things like that. But if we can look at just the scale of our own properties and make sure that what we are trying to accomplish on our properties is to the right size and scale where it's going to be harmonic and it's going to be easy to maintain, and we can work with the natural energy systems that are in place, we're going to be able to do a lot less work. If we look at sand dunes, we can also see an example of how the order of size and scale varies based on the size of the sand dune. So there's several different sizes of sand dunes, usually about 5 or 6 different orders of those. So first of all, there's just fine sand blowing. So that would be number 1. And then there's ripples. That would be order number 2. And then there would be a crescent dune, and this would be order number 3. And then it moves on to a star dune, which kind of ends up almost more 3-dimensional, and that's order number 4. And then you get something called an erg, which is almost like a ridge line of a bunch of the star dunes. So it's going to look a little bit more like this. So, sorry, number 2 is ripples. Number 3 is a crescent dune. Number 4 is a star dune. Number 5 is a ridgeline dune or an erg. And unfortunately, I'm running out of space. I'm going to make my erg a little bit smaller here. And then the largest form of all of these things here is what's called a draw. So draw is just D-R-A-A. And the draws are so large that it doesn't even move. So over time, when we're looking at the movement of these things, the smaller they are, the more movement there is. So the ripples, if you just track one ripple, they can move about 1 meter per day. And there are millions of these in the world, maybe even billions of ripples out there in the world. So number-wise, there are the most of these, and they can move about 1 meter a day, which is quite considerable. If we look at the crescent dune, which there's about 100,000 or so of these in the world, they move about 1 meter per year instead of per day. So less of them, they don't move quite as fast. The star dune would move 1 meter in 100 years, and there's only about 10,000 of these in the world. I'm not too sure why that is such a prominent, that's a terrible sand dune. And then the erg, which is kind of like a ridgeline dune, these would move 1 meter every 1,000 years. So moving slower still, larger in scale, and there's maybe 100 of these in the world. And then the draw is so big that it doesn't move at all, or at least perceptibly to us, it doesn't move at all. And the wind actually moves around it instead of moving it. And there's not very many of these at all in the world. And these are so stable that people actually build civilizations at the base of them because they're not moving, and they do offer some sort of shelter and protection in the desert. So with our patterns being formed by the pressure between two media, there are only 3 outcomes that we can really get when two media are interacting and there's pressure between those two media. So let's say that we have media A and media B. So the only effects that can happen to media A would be something positive, something neutral, or something negative could happen to this particular element when there's pressure between these two media. And the same thing goes for B. You can have a positive outcome, a neutral outcome, or a negative outcome. So when you look at collectively these two things together, we could have both elements being positively affected by the pressure between them. We could have that it's neutral for A and positive for B, positive for A, neutral for B, both neutral, neutral, negative, negative, neutral, and negative, negative. So there's only 9 variations of effects that are even possible when there's pressure between these two media. So how can we use these pattern ideas to help our design? Well, if we look at, even this one here, if it's just a neutral outcome, that's not all bad. I mean, it's kind of pointless for us to be doing something if it's a neutral outcome. But generally, we have 4 ways that we can put pressure between these two media and end up with a pretty positive result. And there were supposed to be 9 different things. What did I miss here? Oh, the positive and negatives too. Haha, so they end up being neutral. Sorry about that. So there's also a positive negative and a negative positive in here as well. So those would all end up with neutral results. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. And so really there's only 3 ways that we can put these two elements together that's going to be detrimental. So out of 9 possible variations, we have 3 that are very positive, 3 that are kind of a neutral result, it's not really beneficial or detrimental, and then only 3 that would actually be considered a negative effect. So how do we work with these things? We want to learn how to harmonize with them, and we want to make sure that we're going to be getting that positive result.